90 meters of solid granite stands between a spy satellite and whatever Iran is actually building right now. And for 4 months, the world's been asking the wrong question about this country. Everyone wants to know, is Iran's new supreme leader even alive? Wrong question. Here's the right one. If he's really running the country, who signed off on the construction crew that just finished building a full security wall around a nuclear site the IAEA has never once been allowed inside? Because somebody approved that. Somebody's paying that crew. And it wasn't the man whose face is plastered on posters across Tehran. 2 stories broke this week. A funeral and a mountain. By the end of this, you'll see they're the same story, running on the same clock. Here's what nobody's connecting yet. In one city this week, hundreds of thousands of people are marching behind a coffin for a man killed back in February. 90 miles away, inside a mountain, cement mixers are running on a schedule. Those aren't 2 separate stories. That's one story. Stick with me, and I'll show you exactly how the funeral and the mountain get paid for by the same negotiation. Let's start with the man in that coffin. Ali Khamenei ruled Iran for 36 years. He was killed February 28th in the opening strike of the war with the US and Israel, along with his daughter, his son-in-law, his daughter-in-law, and a granddaughter who hadn't turned 2 yet. 4 generations of one family, gone in a single strike that also happened to be the first shot of a war. That's not a footnote in a briefing. That's the human weight sitting underneath everything else in this story. The oil talks, the mountain, all of it. None of it happens without that morning in February. Now, on paper, Iran's nuclear program is supposed to be frozen. The 3 flagship sites, Natanz, Fordow, Isfahan, all took real damage in that war. Fordow's tunnel entrances got sealed with dirt, and as of the last Imagery pass in late June, still haven't been touched. Natanz lost its power systems, its HVAC chillers got knocked sideways, and the access roads are still broken. 1 vehicle. That's what analysts could find moving near the old enrichment plant there. 1. So that part of the picture looks like exactly what the June 17th memorandum with Washington requires. Tehran agreed to hold the status quo on anything nuclear while talks continue. But there's a 4th site that breaks that picture completely. Pickaxe Mountain, 1 mile south of Natanz. Think of it less like a bunker and more like a bank vault carved into rock. Construction that started back in 2020 after a fire, widely blamed on sabotage, wrecked a centrifuge hall at Natanz. Iran's own nuclear chief said, on the record, at the time, they'd rebuild in the heart of the mountain. That's not a theory somebody cooked up. That's their own stated plan, 6 years old, now apparently finished enough to wall off. And here's why you should care, even if you've never thought about centrifuges in your life. This connects straight to your gas tank. Iran is trying to reopen oil exports to Japan, the first deal of its kind since 2019, while at the same time claiming the right to charge toll fees on ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. That's the choke point about 1/5 of the world's oil moves through. You cannot separate the nuclear story from the shipping story. They're chips on the same table. And the man who's supposed to be steering all of it, his son and named successor, Mojtaba, hasn't appeared in public. Not once, since February 28th. No photo, no video, no voice, just written statements released through state media. So here's where we land. A nuclear site that's supposed to be frozen and isn't. A shipping lane Iran wants paid to protect. And a head of state nobody's actually seen in 4 months. Those 3 threads don't just sit next to each other. One of them is funding the other 2. And the imagery that proves it landed 3 days ago. 3 days ago, analysts got the newest satellite pass. Here's exactly what's in it. Comparing images from earlier this year against late June, they found tunnels running west, east, and south of the Pickaxe Mountain site. Crews reinforcing at least 2 entrance points. Dump trucks, cement mixers, truck-mounted cranes. That's not a skeleton crew keeping the lights on. Moving that kind of equipment on a repeating schedule takes a real workforce, realistically dozens of people minimum, plus a concrete supply chain that has to be sourced and logged somewhere, even under wartime security. On paper, the memorandum says freeze it. In the field, they poured concrete over the western tunnel extension back in February, and by late June, they'd wrapped the entire perimeter in a wall. Now here's the number that actually matters, and it's worth sitting with, around 440 kilograms. That's Iran's estimated stockpile of uranium enriched to 60%, mostly sitting at Isfahan, with smaller amounts at Natanz and Fordow. Weapons grade is 90%, and the jump from 60 to 90 isn't a long climb. It's actually the cheapest, fastest stretch of the whole enrichment process, because the hard separative work already happened getting to 60. So that stockpile isn't a side detail, it's the single number every analyst keeps circling back to when they ask what Pickaxe Mountain is actually for. On the shipping side, the mechanics get almost physically comic. Ship tracking data from Funeral Week showed at least 8 vessels making U-turns after Iranian patrol boats warned them off the direct Hormuz route, forcing them to hug the Omani coastline instead. That adds transit time, and for tanker operators, it adds real insurance costs. Iran's ambassador to China has said outright Tehran will collect transit fees through the Strait. The U.S. counteroffer: drop the toll claim, reopen the Strait fully, and unlock roughly $6 billion currently frozen in Qatar. Oman's floated a workaround too, a voluntary donation fund for maritime security security instead of a mandatory Iranian fee. Strip away the diplomatic language and that's what this actually is. A toll dispute over a waterway dressed up in flags. And on the leadership side, here's the mechanics of an invisible head of state. Mojtaba communicates only through written statements. No audio, no video, no photos since February. His three brothers, Mostafa, Maysam, Masood, showed up at the funeral, visibly emotional on state TV. Mojtaba skipped his own wife's memorial the week before. Officials reportedly told him directly, "Don't go to the burial in Mashhad either. Too dangerous." So on paper, Iran has a government, a supreme leader, a negotiating position. In the field, it's three visible brothers, one absent principal, and a concrete perimeter going up around a mountain nobody's allowed to walk into. And that's where every other channel covering this stops. Wrong place to stop. Because concrete doesn't pour itself. Somebody with real authority is greenlighting workforce rotations and security clearances at a total blackout site on schedule right now, while the one man who's supposed to hold that authority hasn't said a word in 4 months. So who is it? But here's the part. Almost everyone covering this leaves out. The right question isn't, is Mojtaba alive? It's, who's actually approving Pickaxe Mountain's construction schedule while the public-facing leader can't appear? Because that point's somewhere specific. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, and foreign minister Abbas Araghchi, the two men actually running point on talks with Washington, were reportedly flagged, according to New York Times reporting, as potential Israeli targets during the spring negotiations. The U.S. reportedly warned Iran about this directly. Sit with what that means structurally. The visible negotiators are operating under a known threat. The nominal head of state is in hiding, and decisions, including ones about a nuclear facility, keep getting made and executed anyway. That's not chaos, that's compartmentalization. Different rooms making different calls, with nobody required to reconcile them. Second thing everyone misses, the status quo clause in the memorandum has a built-in loophole nobody's forcing Iran to close. President Masoud Pezeshkian was asked directly about Pickaxe Mountain back in September, and his answer was, essentially, satellite images alone can't prove what's happening, so send inspectors if you want certainty. Technically true, satellites really can't see through 90 meters of granite, but he's also not inviting anyone in. Both things are true at once, and that gap is exactly what the whole site is built to exploit. Third, and this is the one nobody's putting a red circle around, the Japan oil talks have a hard deadline. The U.S. sanctions waiver expires August 21st. That's roughly 6 weeks out from the funeral. If Iran can't lock refinery contracts and get tankers moving through a de-risked Hormuz before that date, the waiver lapses, and they're back to zero on foreign currency, right when their own central bank is already warning about food and medicine shortages. So the mountain and the oil clock are running on the same calendar, and Tehran needs one to not blow up the other. If Hormuz stays hot over the toll dispute, insurers won't touch tankers bound for Japan, and August 21st closes with nothing signed. Put it together and the picture flips. An invisible leader isn't a power vacuum. It's cover. It lets every faction, IRGC-aligned hardliners, the civilian negotiating team, whoever's actually greenlighting that mountain, each claim they're carrying out the old man's vision, without any of them having to answer for how those visions contradict each other. That's the part the headlines miss. Not Iran is unstable. Iran is running 3 separate decision-making tracks under one dead man's name, and the tracks are starting to collide, right around the same 6 weeks. 3 dates. Write these down, because these are the moments this actually resolves, not vague tensions ahead. July 9th, Mashhad, Khamenei's burial. Watch specifically whether Mojtaba appears, not for the emotional optics, for the operational tell. If he shows up there after skipping everything in Tehran, his security team has decided the succession needs a face more than it needs him hidden. If he skips that one too, the compartmentalized command theory just got a lot stronger. August 21st, the sanctions waiver deadline on the Japan oil deal. If tankers aren't moving by then, Iran's currency problem gets worse, not better, right as shortages are already being flagged internally. And ongoing, every satellite pass on Pickaxe Mountain from here forward. The IAEA's been asked directly, on the record, whether it will seek access. No answer yet. That silence is itself a data point, because Iran's already told you what happens if nobody forces the question. Keep pouring concrete. Keep saying send inspectors without ever opening the door, and let the ambiguity run out the clock until either that mountain is finished or the world just gets tired of asking.